Good evening and welcome to the studio tonight. And I just realised this camera was in the way a little bit. Lighting is really horrible when you're trying to do pyrography. I'm going to have to push this up a bit because that's too close. But yeah, because it gets shiny and it's reflecting light. I'm not sure I can do much about it. It's made it a bit different, it's made it darker, but there's less shine. So hopefully that won't look too bad. If it does start to look a bit dark, obviously I'm sure you will let me know. I'm just, yeah, you need incredibly diffuse lights. Normally, if I was doing this not on stream, I'd have it tipped like that. Actually, you know, that's interesting. Ooh, that's an interesting possibility. Normally I would work with this on an easel. He says, wondering where his easel is. Because I haven't done much, well, the pyrography I've done this year has been on stream. And of course, if I can tip it like that, then I can apply a little bit more light to it and you don't get the same reflections. But anyway, right, so pyrography. At this point, I'm going to wish I'd got a piece of paper. Ah, dear. You know what? One of these days I'll be actually prepared for streaming, as opposed to just. It's kind of one of these things that there's never anything I need to do, sort of before to set up for streaming in a way. I sort of turn the computer on, start OBS up. Start Pretzel up, and I left it that way last night, and I started it up today, and I find things like this camera is got its flicker filter turned off, and despite the fact that you're telling it to turn it on, it wouldn't, and I had to reset the camera and go into a different utility just to force the flicker back on, and it's not changed in its why. But yes, there's a couple of setting the materials up is a different matter. However, things like I've just realised I could probably do with a piece of paper or so, with which I could actually clean off the pyro tool. I don't happen to have one around, so I shall get something. It's the incidental things like that which always sort of I forget. So, you know, like the pyrography tool, or I've got some carving to do, but I need to either make a bench hook or screw the carving to a carving stand. But that takes time to do, and I need to find the right screws and things like that to do it, and it becomes a case of I can either set up to stream or I can stream. I can't do both. Right, so turn on the pyro tool. Let's heat that up, and we shall do some more on this kitten picture. Don't know what I'm going to do on this kitten picture, so we're just going to do something and see. This wants colouring in. There's some areas along here. His face, or his forehead particularly, obviously wants some work done, I think, in order to, yeah, push that back a bit. That's too bright, that needs some work done. That's not so bad, but it does need some work, so we'll do some around here. So let's see if when I look at this on stream, it's sort of really, it's not too dark across there, but it is too light just in front of it. So let's tone that down a little and see if we can just round things off a little bit. What am I at? Quite warm. I might turn this down a bit. It's been, in fact I will. It's been a little while since I've done some pyrography, so I've got to get used to working with the tool again. And so I turn it down so that I don't make too many mistakes. I'm now working, as you can see, with a camera right in front of my face, which is kind of odd because I can just see it out the. I was going to say the corner of my eye, but it's not the corner of my eye because it's right in the middle of my vision. But it's sort of there, like this dirty, great big black blob. That's the only it's not the only difficulty, it's a difficulty when you're streaming things like this. In order for you to get a reasonable view of what it is I'm doing, the camera can sometimes get in the way of me doing it, but never mind. Light source is over here. That edge of that face doesn't look quite right. I will come back to that later though. Shape's not right yet. The whole shape is not yet right. Hopefully that's going to come as I shade in some of this colouring here. So I'm working with a reference picture of this pussycat because he doesn't happen to be around to look at for real this evening, so not quite sure what I'm doing with this at the moment. So what I'm going to do, because I'm not quite sure what I'm doing with it, is I am just going to follow the shapes. So by which means that what I'm doing is I'm looking at the reference and I'm looking at the shape of this dark area, for example, and I am attempting to come up with something that looks similar to it in terms of the shape. So I'm sort of forgetting all about how Theo's face actually looks. And what I'm doing here then is just replicating a shape that I see. And in theory, if I do that correctly, will ultimately come out looking right. Half the difficulty you have in creating any image of something realistic is not creating what you think should be there, but creating what is actually there. And that's not always the same thing. Your eye gets easily fooled by things, and you sort of look at something and think that's, you know, I know that the nose goes in this sort of shape, therefore I must. And if you do that, then most of the time you end up with something that doesn't look right. And so whenever I get to the point where I am not really that sure about what I'm doing, I will revert to just doing shapes, and that way I cease to look at the thing as a whole. I cease to look at it as a pussycat, and I just look at it as a collection of coloured shapes, and I'm replicating the coloured shapes. It's a concept which is in painting they describe as paint what you see, not what you think. And it's something which is quite actually a lot harder to do than you might think. But you kind of have to focus on it, just on shapes, and sometimes if you're trying to practice that sort of thing, one of the easiest things to do is to get a square piece of paper, cut a hole in it, and just put that over your reference image and just look at that bit. It's harder to see it in context then, and you tend to follow the shapes more than you would do if you were seeing the whole reference image and you're trying then you are then trying to draw a pussycat again, as opposed to just draw a collection of shapes which, when they are all drawn, look like a pussycat. So I just want to apply some block colour really at this point, and what I've got to get used to doing is, again, and I have to do this every time I start pyrography for a while, is used to slowing down. I really want to use this like a pencil, and to do that I've got to really turn the heat up really fast, really high, which means basically I cannot make any mistakes at all. Whereas if I keep it the temperature lower like it is now and just slow down, I still can't make mistakes, but it takes a lot longer to make a mistake and less chance of it being a permanent mistake. Excuse me. Now, fortunately, oh, excuse me, I'll have a drink. Unfortunately, pyrography isn't, well, this style of pyrography anyway, isn't as quick as a lot of people expect it to be, because what they've usually seen is how pyrography is portrayed in videos, either even on television. When I've seen it on television, they almost always use a time lapse. Well, that is, of course, as you can see, because pyrography isn't a fast art form. It's not particularly like, you know, taking a paintbrush. I was about to say slap paint on. No artists, well, I suppose some do, but they don't really slap paint on. They're doing it deliberately in a particular style. You know, you get instant colour. Here I am effectively cooking the wood, and cooking takes time. If you go and make some toast, for example, it isn't instantly ready. You have to wait for the toast to brown, and if you want it more browner than you want it even more brown, you have to wait a bit longer. Effectively, this is the same thing. I'm not using bread, but I am toasting the wood. It is almost identical. And given that I could actually take a slice of bread with this tool, and I could toast the bread basically with this tool, it would take an awfully long time if it's a big slice of bread, but I could create a picture on it, for example. Some bits toasted, some bits not. But effectively I'm doing the same thing. And of course, if you ever watched a toaster, especially if it's one of these grill type, then in an oven or on top of a hob, something like that, you'll see it doesn't instantly go brown. It takes a few minutes to first heat up and then dry out, and then gradually go browner. And that's effectively what I'm doing here. I'm heating the wood up. It is to some extent drying out, and then it starts to go brown. So I am actually toasting the wood. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of why it actually isn't as quick as a lot of people will think it should be. Because if I was just doing straight black and white, no other colour at all, no shading at all, these days I'll have to try some of that. Then I could easily just turn the heat up on this and let it go. This tool will glow almost orange, really quite hot, and therefore it will cook the wood really quickly. But I also, that's a bit like drawing with an ink pen. You don't get a second chance. You have to be, confident about what you're doing. And if you are, then you're drawing in that particular single shade style, then you can do it really quickly. Actually, it'll have to be something I'll try. I normally prefer working in this sort of style, which I more usually describe as photorealistic. I know it doesn't look like a photograph, but it's an easier way to describe this style, because it's got multiple shades of colour. It doesn't have an outline, which is just like a photograph. If you look at a black and white photograph or a monochrome photograph, there's different shades of colour. There's no outlines around it that are coloured in or anything like that. So it is a photographic style. Nothing particularly wrong with outlining. A lot of people do that for pyrography. It's just a different style of working. I am not a great, well, I was about to say I'm not a great fan of it. If it's done right, it looks really good. But I think there's probably different subjects that suit it better than others. And I've not practiced it enough, I guess, to be particularly good at it. There's a lot of skill in deciding what should be outlined and what shouldn't. So of course you could always cheat to some extent. You can get colouring books which are sort of outlines already drawn in the book, and they're meant for children then to take a coloured pencil, a crayon, something like that, and colour in between the lines. There's no reason why you can't take that image, either transfer it or duplicate it onto wood and colour in between the lines. So I suppose you can cheat in that way, and therefore create a somewhat faster artwork, I guess. I mean, the one often that style, a block of colour will be a unique shade within that, but in actual fact I do see a lot of artists that do that actually will shade, like I'm doing here, varying shades. So I'm going to darken this down a bit, but I don't particularly want to lose this marking on the side of Theo's face. So I'm just darkening this down a bit as well, so that when I darken this down a bit more, it doesn't disappear. This tool's got something on the bottom of it. Probably just a little bit of carbon. That's better. I could feel it scratching. That's not too bad. Have I melted? No. I can smell. Is there something that's hot? No, not particularly. I can smell like a melted plastic slightly, so I was just wondering what that was. Okay, so having done that, it now looks too light under here, which of course it is. So we'll add some darker tone under here. So all the time what I'm seeking to try and do here is not to create a dark edge. So every stroke of this pen is ending in a slightly different position. So I feather out the edge, I don't create a line basically. Now if I stopped, and it's a natural thing to want to stop in exactly the same place each time. But if you do that, you create sort of a dark edge. And I don't need a dark edge on here. I want this to just gradually go dark, from dark to lighter. So one of the things that happens when I'm working with pyrography is quite often I'll get lost in the image and what I'm doing, and I tend to forget to do two things. One is to talk and the second is to read chat or to look at chat. So if I don't actually respond for a little while, please excuse me whilst it suddenly occurs to me that I'm actually broadcasting. And I should be actually talking at the same time. So let me tell you a little bit about pyrography. Starting with the name, it has Greek roots, I understand. Pyro, pyrography, two words, pyro and graphy. So pyro, the root of that in Greek is fire, and graphy is graphos, which is writing, so fire writing. I don't know if those ancient Greeks would consider that drawing is writing. Maybe they did, and graphos extends to pictures as well. But effectively, fire writing is how you would almost literally translate it. But as you can see, in this particular style of doing things, there's no fire and there is no writing. It is an image to picture. I tend to prefer, therefore, to describe it as being painting with heat. And effectively, that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm using this like a paintbrush. It's got heat. I'm painting that heat onto the wood, which is cooking the wood, and turning it a different colour. And I kind of think that painting with heat is kind of a nice description of what it is that's going on. I'm using a tool which is electrically heated. You can use anything which is hot, basically, to do this. You can use tools which you'll heat up in a fire, in a gas flame. You can create pyrography using a magnifying glass of the sun. You could do it using a laser. You can use a gas flame, a naked flame. Something like a small blowtorch or an oxyacetylene torch, for example. There are artists that do precisely that, though they will tend to work on a somewhat larger piece. Taking an oxyacetylene torch to something like this would probably apply the pyrography to the desk underneath and leave big holes, but on a bigger piece of wood, but you got bigger areas to cover, and it's thicker, it takes longer to cook, so that's probably more appropriate, using things like blowtorches and oxyacetylene torches for doing things there. Now, yeah, it's got to come under here. So this is electrically heated. It differs from soldering irons. So if you're familiar with a soldering iron, this works in a different way to a soldering iron. With a soldering iron, what you have is a heater unit which then heats a metal core. That metal core transfers the heat down to the soldering tip. So the soldering tip itself works by conducting the heat from the heating core. This is different. This tool is actually passing electricity through that tip itself. So to some extent, the rest of this pen is cold, apart from that tip. Unfortunately, however you look at it, the tip is made out of metal, as is the posts that it's joined to. If I just turn this on, I would be quite happy to touch these posts. This has been running for several minutes now, or quite a long time. They're going to be too hot to touch. That's the only reason I don't want to touch it, is because they're red hot. They're at something like a couple of 100 degrees probably, and I'd get burnt. I'd be applying pyrography to my skin, and that's not something I want to do. But so whilst this is mains electricity that the control unit's plugged into, the voltage that's coming down to here is less than a torch. 1.5 to 3 volts is the usual, so that would be one or two batteries. You know, A cells, D cells, these sorts of things, they're 1.5 volts a piece. This is the same voltage, so it's a, you know, if I unplug this, I'm quite happy to touch both ends of the. Okay, that unplugged really easy. The contact pulley wants to tighten up, but this is safe low voltage. There's not mains on here. It's not hot there either. So from that perspective, it's you know, it's a safe low voltage to do. It just is probably pushing something like about 8 or 9 amps of current, which is quite a lot through this, which is what's causing it to heat up. There are pyrography tools that work like soldering irons, and indeed you can use soldering irons to do this. And I personally don't like using them. I'm just trying to, well, I've got one over there, but a soldering iron. I don't personally like using those styles because to me it's a bit like holding a pen back here and then trying to do work with it. Some people are really good at that. I prefer to have my fingers nearer the tip. I've got better control. So I prefer this style of pyrography tool. Now this particular style of tool is used a lot for freehand work like this. The soldering iron style is used a lot for stamp type pyrography or branding style pyrography, where on the end of it will be like a leaf shape, for example, or a star, and people will create pictures using a branding action. So put it down, wait for it, leave it there for a couple of seconds, lift it off, and work with it from there. There are artists that can create this sort of image with a soldering iron though, so it's not a hard and fast rule or anything like that. It is literally whichever tools you're more comfortable with. This particular one is made, it's called a razor tip. I like it because I can unplug the end, as you saw me do a moment ago, although that in itself can be a disadvantage as well. The disadvantage being that unless the contacts are really good, then there is less power available to heat the tip, whereas some of the other machines have the pens permanently wired to the machine, and therefore they don't have that particular disadvantage. To me that is a disadvantage in that I can't change the pen very easily. I mean, if I want to work with a different pen, I can literally unplug that, plug another pen in, and within seconds I'm able to carry on. And I don't have to get a screwdriver out, for example, to make that sort of change. So pyrography can be applied to lots of different things. Easiest way to describe it is really, I was about to say, is almost anything organic. I suppose you know that's the more normal thing. I'm trying to think you possibly could apply it to things like plastic, but plastic doesn't tend to change colour in gradual steps. It sort of is either melted or not. You know, those sorts of man-made materials perhaps aren't as good, although I'm sure it's possible to design a man-made material that would work like in the same way with the application of heat. But you'll commonly see pyrography on wood, leather, you'll often see it on, and goods. gourds. I don't actually know what they are. I kind of know what they are. I'd recognise one, but what they actually are, I don't know. But yes, they're often decorated with pyrography or gourds. You can even do pyrography on paper. The thicker paper, the more easier it is. So card, for example, is easier than photocopy paper, which takes a lot of skill to try and apply any decent pyrography to. You can apply it also to bone. It was something that was done quite a lot by the old sailing ship sailors on the old sailing ships, as a pastime, whilst they weren't actually actively engaged in sailing. And they'd be done using a sailmaker's needle, which would be heated in a tiny spirit stove. The spirit stove, principally because there's less chance of it setting the board on fire. If it fell over, it tended to go out more than anything. And they pass the needle through the flame a few times, and then you apply it generally to bone. Bone was a material that they had a reasonable amount of. And that tended to be just black marks really, and like I would do with scraper board, they would vary the shades by making thinner lines or thicker lines and spacing them closer or further apart. But though, using that style, you can still get some really amazing pictures and shading. Now what should be starting to happen if you're looking at this is, whilst the shading here is really subtle at the moment, you probably can't see it on video and I can actually see it, but I can see it here, is this area around here is now starting to look further away from you than this area here. So you're starting to see this as the side of the face. And you're starting to get more three-dimensionality, more 3D out of it than when we started. And that's the subtlety of this this large shade range. I'm working here on plywood, on this is birch-faced plywood or birch plywood. I'm using birch plywood. Why am I using birch plywood? That comes down to two different questions. Why am I using birch and why am I using plywood? I'm using birch because birch is a really light wood. It's, in terms of colour, that is. It's not white, but it is one of the lighter woods that you can get. Poplar is even lighter. And the advantage of a really light wood is that you've got more of a contrast range. If I were to do this on ebony, for example, which is almost black, you either have no pyrography or it's as black as you can get. There's about one colour and that's about it, just because there is not much contrast range between a bit that's not had pyrography applied and a bit that has. When I do something like on birch or poplar, for example, there's a lot more colours. I mean, if you look through here, you can easily sort of spot sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I can count different shades, and that gives me a lot more subtle control over shading and things like that to create more of a subtle effect. Poplar and birch both also, if you're looking at this, you can hardly see the grain of the wood either. It is there, I can see it, and you're more likely to see some of it up here around a knot. but even then it's not that noticeable. Actually looks a bit like a sun in this image. And then there are lines of tree rings basically, but the grain of the wood going across here. With birch, poplar, the difference between the rings and the bit between the rings is there's not a lot of difference in colour. There's also not a lot of difference in density and texture, so that when I'm applying pyrography, both those areas take colour in more or less the same way, same speed, and provide the same colour. Some woods, like pine for example, the ring itself is really hard, doesn't really take any colour, takes a lot of heat to change colour. The bit between changes colour like that, and so you get stripes, you get dark and light stripes, and it's really hard to get a consistent colour. The other thing about pine is the bit between the rings, as soon as you apply heat to it, shrinks quite a lot away from your tool, so you end up with ridges as well, which adds another level of texture to what you're doing and another level of difficulty. That doesn't happen anything like as much. In fact, it's not really noticeable at all when you work with birch or with poplar. So that's one reason for doing that. The reason for working with plywood is the wood construction itself. I am cooking the surface of this wood. If you've done any form of cooking, whether it be a steak or toast, you will notice that it shrinks as you heat it, apply heat, as you cook it, it shrinks. If you do that, if you start frying a steak for example and you don't turn it over, then it tends to dome up because the underneath shrinks and the top doesn't. Toast will do the same thing. You turn it over and then it sort of flattens down a little bit. This has got a large area of pyrography on it, and what this does is it causes the top surface to shrink. That tends to make the wood bow this way. If I was doing this on a piece of pure wood, pure birch, pure poplar, it needs to be about 1/4 of an inch or more thick, not to warp when I apply this much pyrography to it. This is probably about 1/8 of an inch, or about 2-3 millimeters thick. But because of the way the wood is constructed in layers, you have a layer with the grain running this way, a layer with the grain running that way. It depends on how many plies of wood there are, what the construction is. Sometimes they'll apply them at more angles, the more plies there are. And what that does is, whilst this top layer is trying to bow and warp the wood in a particular direction, the other layers underneath are strongly resisting that because they want to pull it in a different direction, and it tends to even out the stresses and it stays a lot more flatter. So plywood is a lot more dimensionally stable when pyrography is applied. It also can be thinner, so it's a lot lighter to mount or to put on a wall or anything like that, or even just to send through the post. Yeah, so that's the reason for using these particular woods. Right, so interesting thing about 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's about 1.5. Sorry, I'm just looking. It's about 1.5 second delay. I was watching my monitor over there. There's about 1.5 second delay between my what I'm doing here and it actually coming out to you. or to being broadcast out to you, and then obviously you've got the stream delay on top of that. One of the things I can't actually do it, I don't think now, but with this, the broadcast delay is a little bit more than it used to be for OBS. One of the things I used to do with when I was broadcasting and had a monitor in front of me is I could actually apply pyrography whilst looking at the monitor, which makes reading chat a bit easier. But also what it meant was the image that you're seeing here isn't quite the same as I'm seeing live. The way in which the camera views this image is very much like me holding this piece of board at arm's length, or even longer. You know, it's the equivalent of about standing about 4 feet away, which gives you a different perspective on the picture. Because where I am here, I'm effectively a lot closer to it than the camera, even though the camera's in front of me. It's a weird sort of phenomenon. But if I stand back, I get the same overlook as the camera's currently showing you. So what I used to do a lot of was actually use that, instead of me disappearing off camera while I stand back and have a look at this. I could actually look at the monitor and see that while still staying within range of the camera. But I could actually, because there was probably only about a quarter of a second delay, I could actually apply pyrography whilst watching the monitor, which was an interesting way of creating the art. Because to get the effect like you are seeing here with this being more three-dimensional, you do need to step back to look at it. That wants to be darker. So to some extent, pyrography is a relaxing art form. It's really hard to do fast. I mean, yes, I can turn the heat up and then I have to work fast, but it takes an awful lot of concentration to do that. Generally speaking, at the sort of heat levels I'm using here, it's more of a relaxed art form. You can't work at super high speed, it just doesn't serve any purpose. Yes, I can whip this tool backwards and forwards. It just slows down. It slows it down even more to do that. And so you do have to sort of just apply patience. And I was about to say sit back, but I'm stood up. Sit back, relax, and just go with the flow of it. Let the tool do the work. There's not a lot else you can do, but just wait for it to cook the wood. You can help yourself to do things a little bit faster, even though, and that is by following a line like I'm doing here. I am to some extent preheating the wood that I'm about to come onto, which means it doesn't take as much time before that little bit of wood will cook to the colour I want it, and I can move on. So I am just overlapping each of the pen strokes as I go down. So it's applying a preheat, and then I overlap and just keep steadily moving across the image. Now that's a little bit quicker than if I did a bit here, then went and did up there and then came back down here, etc. But not a fantastic difference. So for anybody that's watching the stream, you are watching Pyrography here. It's one of 4, well, one of 5, 6 or more different things I do on stream. And have all been done on stream. You can see a number of the pictures on the right hand side there, and just in that particular position. They are all pictures of things which have been done on stream. Those are jewellery, that's chainmail, that's you're currently seeing there. But a number of pyrographic images do appear in that camera roll at times. Some really nice ones. You'll see some scraper board in there as well. That's a black and white art form. Oh, it starts as black and white. It starts as monochrome. Is perhaps you can get scraper board with coloured foil instead of it being white, so it can be gold and silver and things like that. In fact, I've got some. Must try it out at some point. But that appears in that's an art form which has been done on stream. In fact, I did my first ever scraper board image live on camera, and it actually turned out quite well. That's in the so when you'll see at some point in the roll a black and white portrait, and that's the very first one that was done on stream. So one of the things I do is wood carving, specifically something called relief carving, but that's done with sharp chisels. So if you like the thrill of seeing dangerously sharp chisels being used in front of you, then that's perhaps a stream for you to watch. They're all driven by hand, and the chisels are, I will say, razor sharp, possibly sharper, and they and throughout the use, so within a stream they'll actually get sort of sharpened 5 or 6 times. So we do keep them really sharp. Let you into a little secret though, whilst it may look like it's dangerous, it isn't. Not when you know what you're doing. But I have cut myself on the chisels once while I was putting them away. Actually both times I think whilst I was putting them away. Caught my fingers on the edge of a chisel that was in the case, and just caused a little bit of bleeding because I cut myself. But they were that sharp that it was almost, what might be a scratch was cut deep enough to cause my finger to bleed. We've also done something called punchcraft. At some point you'll see what looks like 2 big round pictures of some railway engines, a modern one and a steam engine. They are punchcraft. They're made in the same way which rugs are made, by jamming a very sharp needle through material, dragging a thread through with it and creating a loop. I tend to use somewhat dangerous looking tools on this stream. I mean, this is at 200 odd or even higher. I don't actually know the temperature of this. I've never actually measured it, but it's in excess of 200 degrees. And there's very sharp chisels, and I've done some knife carving as well on stream, and they're extremely sharp knives. Indeed, I've got a scalpel just to one side of me here, but I don't use that for carving very often. That tends to get used for the scraper board, which is using extremely sharp pointed objects. There's the carving, of course, with very sharp chisels. And actually I've got some mallet chisels over there as well, which I can use. Although I don't have an appropriate mallet for to drive them. Yeah, so the punchcraft, very sharp things, and then I use needles when I do some of things like the making some of the bracelets with beads. I use needles, which are quite sharp. Dear, I'm just trying to think. Magic dots. Yeah, the magic dots is about the only thing that I do use, which there's nothing really sharp about. That is a pastime. I don't even really call it a craft of putting little plastic dots onto a picture. But I was just thinking then of, what is it, chainmail? Yeah, chainmail's not so bad. I mean, you can hurt yourself with the pliers quite significantly, especially if you trap your fingers. The carving, oh yeah, glass engraving. Done a little bit of that on stream, and that's using high-speed engraving tools. Which can sort of seriously burn or damage your skin if you catch yourself. Don't know. Seem to use lots of dangerous things if you don't use them properly. Of course, I use them all properly, so there's nothing particularly dangerous about using them. But I'm sure those of you that come and watch when I am using them are doing so just to see me make a mistake. Quite why, I'm not quite sure. It's not a pleasant sight when you see a serious injury dripping blood, but I don't know if they're available on the internet, but in the UK the health and safety people used to make available some really rather gory videos of things like people with screwdrivers stuck in or through their hands. They're not pleasant to look at. It's definitely not video game type images that I guess people will tend to think of. So it's Friday today now. It's Friday today, so I streamed yesterday, I streamed the day before. I'm not doing too bad this week. Coyote Dancer, hello and welcome. I suppose I always call you Coyote Dancer, but it's actually Coyote, isn't it? There's no E in the middle. But welcome, nice to see you again. How are you? How's your pyrography going? Must admit, I haven't had a look at your website for a while. You sneaked in there. I'm not doing too bad, thank you. As you know, I've started streaming again, having taken a year off whilst we dealt with certain matters, and then moved, and so I'm now getting back into streaming. And it's getting it's sort of still. I'm surprised myself, it's how easily I am slipping back into doing things like talking whilst I'm streaming, but I'm also kind of surprised that I'm still not as fluent as I was when I stopped. But yeah. I'm trying. It's been that long since I've done. I mean, I've done this year, I think, and I've done it on stream. But it's been sort of several weeks since I last did any, and I'm well out of practice. And that eye still is. I've still got to do something in that side of the face. That side of the face still looks odd to me. But this is Theo the kitten. I'm not sure you've seen Theo. You may have done on an earlier stream. No, he's not around. Sorry, you'll see me looking this way, those of you who are watching, and that is because that's where the computer that's doing the streaming is. That's where the monitors are. And I was just looking at the picture, looking at this image on the monitors. At some point, I'm going to have to put one in front of me somehow, because I look at them quite a bit, and it's a bit disconcerting having to look over there. So this fella, it is a fella, Theo's a male kitten, is ginger. No wonder. Yeah, there are times when I kind of wish Twitch had as instantaneous broadcasting as Mixer does, because I'm now wondering what you're saying. No wonder that. My memory doesn't I'm not yet got back into remembering 15 seconds of conversation, which is about how long it's delayed, I think. Dear. But yes, this fella's the ginger pussycat, so this is almost in actual colour as opposed to sort of a monochrome. It's sort of actual his colour. And I'm not that far off either. I can't. Yeah. No, I'm not. Sorry. I am frustrated with myself because I can't actually make this look quite right to me at the moment. I will probably with more work. And I've got to stop looking at it as a whole picture and just start concentrating on the bits that I'm doing so that I don't sort of mess up. But you're not much of a talker. I never was, but one of the things that I did at work must be 15 years or more ago, was I did two things. One is I did a presentation course, where one of the tests in it was doing what I'm doing now effectively, and that is giving a presentation to a camera with nothing else or nobody else in the room, which is essentially what I'm doing here, because there's nobody else in this room and I'm talking to this camera in front of me. And it's amazing how hard that is, especially if you're used to doing presentations to people, because there's no feedback. And that makes a lot of people really uncomfortable when they're trying to do it. But the second thing I did was I spent about 2 years lecturing, giving some computer training to people who knew what they were talking about, and that helps you talk a lot, because you kind of have to. It's kind of pointless otherwise being a lecturer if you're not going to speak. So that kind of helped me when I came to broadcasting. But when it's still slightly different is broadcasting, and I've just started this past week uploading videos to YouTube. So taking the old broadcasts which I recorded, some of the first ones back in March 2016, I think it was. No, 15. March 2015. And splitting them up into shorter pieces and uploading them onto YouTube. And as part of that, I've been listening to some of them, and it is amazing the difference in style. The ones I do now, I basically don't stop talking. Back then, I didn't really talk a great deal. It's quite amazing. So if you want to laugh, go have a look on YouTube. Zavagana on YouTube. There's some of the early. I've just started. There's about 8 up there now. But some of the very early streams, which are pyrography as it happens, and you can hear me being really kind of hesitant about talking and not saying a great deal, and also there's a lot of and ums in there which I still try and avoid. I hate hearing them. I have to put my mindset into the presentation mode. That was something I learnt to do whilst I was presenting, was you just slow down a little bit, and in doing so you give yourself time to think and avoid the ums and the ers, and also helps people understand what you're saying. And it's all right, and you learn it's all right for there to be silence. People don't like silence while they're speaking, which is another reason why they put the ums and ers in. I didn't get embarrassed about it. I kind of don't really think about the camera in a way as though it's, it's taking a picture of me. So I don't get that sort of red effect. I just naturally am not a person that talks a great deal. So in some ways it is quite a bit of an effort to do so whilst I'm broadcasting, but it almost turns on and turns off at the end of broadcasting. I was trying to remember then, Curted answer, whether you actually do or have broadcast or recorded it. I can't remember. Isn't that bad? I can't actually remember. And the other thing that I still do now that I did then is when I start talking, I stop doing work. And I have a tendency to stop talking when I start doing work. yeah, that could have dark along there. I think when I'm doing pyrography as well, I tend to talk to myself sometimes in a shorthand quite a lot, which is interesting. One thing I don't do a lot of whilst I'm watching streams is actually chat in chat, because and so I understand people who lurk a lot because I do the same thing. I can't really sort of watch a stream and talk, talk a different thing in chat at the same time. So I tend to concentrate on one or the other. So it always surprised me that you go to some streams where people are doing nothing. They're talking virtually non-stop. They must be continuously typing. And I wonder, are they actually watching the streams at the same time? I'm looking at this thinking, what do I do now? I keep looking at it and keep thinking, what do I do now? And then just do something. I want this darker. I want this area darker. And that area down there a bit darker. Let's darken this down a bit. Got a light source which is over this way somewhere, so I know this side of his face is darker, but also this side of his face is got a slightly darker colour anyway. It is more ginger on this side than on that side, which is also a bit fooling. Oh, don't worry about taking up my time. That's all right. From my perspective, that makes it more interesting. Even if I do stop what I'm doing, I try not to, but it makes it a lot more interesting. It's a lot easier to talk to somebody than to give a monologue. So if you want to chat, by all means do so. I don't know there's many broadcasters that wouldn't like you doing that. Yeah. Oh no, that is something that I did know. Of course, you've just broadcast it, and Twitch now records chat as well, so it's saved for at least for the next 2 weeks. But yes, no, I was aware of that. Of course, for reasons that you've got some of my stuff for a start. Now I'm going to turn this up a little bit. Yeah, the tool, that is. You like some of my YouTube videos. I'm supposed to read this out, am I? Okay, well, thank you very much for that. You may well be the first person that's looked at them, though. Is that Zeragan out there used to be my personal YouTube account that I would look at. Well, I'd just have the videos that I used to watch and people follow on there. But I have such an eclectic interest in things, from steam engines to London Underground to caves to space, that when I start putting videos associated with the arts and crafts, it kind of didn't work very well, especially if anybody was doing things like linking from the shop or whatever. So I spent some time moving out all my personal stuff, and now that's dedicated to the broadcasting. And speak it to the world. Well, I do. Every time I put a video up there, it does go out on Twitter and also on Facebook. There's a Facebook as well, as you may or may not be aware of. But that's also Zeragan Art. So everything's Zeragan Art now, which is quite nice. I have been thinking about whether I should put something up on something like Pinterest or one of the others. So much to do, so little time to do it. Because one of the other things I want to try this year is some glasswork. I think you were probably around when I first disclaimed the fact that whilst I was interested in it, I didn't ever want to do it. And now, of course, that's changed somewhat. But I must admit that's changed somewhat because I have... it was about a year ago, I became aware of how it was less expensive than I thought it was. So I'm hoping later this year to do a short course just to make sure I do actually like doing it, because I might not. And then if I do, I will. I'm wanting to establish myself with some glassworking equipment, which will be done on stream as well. Although it won't be in this studio, it'll be in a different studio, but I do want to get that to do that if I find it fun enough to do. I can't particularly see any reason why I wouldn't, but I'm going to be sensible about checking it out first. I hope it would be awesome. Yes, I don't know if you... Well, I think you may have heard the story, but I can remember some of my earliest memories, kind of art type stuff, is watching, probably on holiday, I think it was, probably in the Isle of Man, but watching a glass worker in a shop window. Also, I was stood at a shop window watching a glass worker making all sorts of things out of glass, but one of the things he sort of kept working on throughout the period of time was a galleon made out of glass, and the whole body, the masts, the sails, all the rigging was done. He just kept adding to it, and I got totally fascinated by it. And I've been interested in glasswork ever since then. And I even these days, and I do it with streams, but I will watch a glassworker for hours doing things. In fact, I deliberately don't watch some streams sometimes because I will watch them for hours instead of doing things. The only thing that stops me watching some streamers, though, is they tend to be somewhat colourful in language, and I just don't see the point about it. It annoys me. But having said which, what I was about to say, it's got nothing to do with it, but I was just thinking the sort of thing I'd like to try and be able to do with glasswork is I have no particular, well, I have no interest at all in a lot of the glass workers that you're seeing on Twitch are doing things like smoking apparatus, shall we say, which of course is intended for use with legally available tobacco, but I have no interest in that sort of thing at all. So I'm more interested in being able to do things. I can't really think of what I'd like to try and do, but sculptural glass, I guess, is probably more. It can be really beautiful, yes, and that's partly, I guess, it kind of looks so graceful as well, especially if it's just clear glass, as the galleon was. But even the coloured glass is absolutely fantastic stuff. But I guess some of it is it's shiny, shiny stuff that attracts me. I must be a magpie in a past life, but it's shiny. But yeah, it is really beautiful. They are really beautiful. I kind of like to be able to, I don't know, do something like glass butterflies, for example. maybe not even realistic looking ones, but they sort of the sort of the way butterflies look in your imagination, something like that. I think actually it might, having said which, I have to be careful about copying, but I kind of would like to be able to do glasswork of, I was going to say natural objects, like a bird perhaps, with with the spread wings, or trees, like a small bonsai perhaps, or a small animal, something like that. I don't know. Whilst I don't like spiders, but something like a spider, because you've got a decent sort of shape there, to sculptural shape. Actually, I was just thinking then that perhaps a good subject would be something like a snail with a really colourful shell. That one's a bit more colour around there. So, in fact, I'm going to have to write some of those ideas down, because I keep writing down ideas about what I might do with glasswork. I'd probably have to start with the beadwork though, just because that's probably all I'd be able to do with any sort of decent skill level to start with. Because unfortunately it would probably have to be a craft which would be saleable, because I understand glass itself is not particularly cheap to buy. That's looking quite good here. This little bit around his nose, or muzzle, I guess is more accurately described. You can see the archetypal cat smile coming into this. Which is pure coincidence, because I wasn't intending to bring that in. It actually means that that area there is also a little bit too light. You just bought a set of glass made earrings from the Renaissance. Ah! Yes. That's you kind of do feel like you need to purchase something when you spend hours watching them. Hopefully, though, they are worth having purchased them. And it's interesting. Renaissance Fair is kind of the place I would expect to see a glassworker in a way. It's I often think about doing some of the craft shows that are around here, but if I was going to do it, I kind of need to be doing a lot more craft work, I think, to with some of the carving or pyrography or whatever, just to have enough stock. But you love the idea about wildlife. Well, that's something. If I remember rightly, that's something you incorporate a lot in your in your pyrography, isn't it? Friends had to pull you away. Yeah, I can remember that sort of. Well, as a kid, of course, I guess my hand would be up there, being sort of pulled away. I'm gonna go get some food or something, and just another 5 minutes and another 5 minutes. But yes, well, even now, if I'm watching one of would it Pocky Ranger 69 particularly is one of he's disappeared for a while, but watching him, I've had Lady Zara saying, "Come on, it's time to go to bed," and Betty Bye's time, and you really should turn that off now. So even now, sort of a lot of years later, I'm still watching the Glassworkers. I don't know what it is about it. I mean, it's liquid glass, and it's, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just purely the skill that they employ. I don't actually know what it is that's really that fascinating to me, anyway. To sit there or to stand there and watch them manipulating glass. I mean, I suppose it's taking this rod of clear or glass, and then it's suddenly becoming something completely different. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad they're one of your favourite sets. So, I was going to say, it's not that long ago though, is it, Coyote Dancer? Yeah, and he's got a bit of white fur around there, and there's a bit of backlighting. Oh bother. One of the problems with well, I'm speaking to you. You know what the problems of pyrography are. Is, of course, when you don't have not using the tool, it tends to heat up a bit more. Yeah, that's coming along a bit. I want to darken this area off a little bit. I want to be able to see that curve just around the muzzle there. Yeah, I've got to do something about that side of the face. Really. Oh, I was misreading what Petzl Box has just put in the stream there. I thought it said Pirate's Cat, and I thought that's rather appropriate. It's not Pirate's Call. Maybe I ought to put my other glasses on, then I'd actually be able to read it properly. He looks like he's got a fringe. That's what it is. It kind of looks like he's got a really hard fringe. Okay, let's do something about that. This side of the face is sort of getting a bit of dimensionality about it now, and that one sort of still looks flat, and that I don't. Yeah. Let's see if we can lose that really hard fringe look. Right. How do I do this? There's a texture in that. Sort of a slightly hair-like texture, and it was done at the wrong angle as well. So the hairs appear to be pointing in the wrong direction. And this is going to be quite difficult. Well, okay, yeah. It's going to be quite... The reason I was about to say it's going to be quite difficult is because normally you kind of would go darker as you go backwards. So as you go around the side of the face, you go darker, which pushes that away, which is why this looks to be sort of... This side of the face looks to be further back than the nose. But when you've got a light source shining on this side, it cannot be darker. And indeed, looking at the reference picture, it isn't darker. And that sort of complicates things a little bit, but it's in this particular case, it's a lot lighter and it gets darker as it comes around the front of the face. And I'm looking at that and wondering just how that's going to look if I do apply pyrography like that, or whether I ought to cheat and actually sort of forget the fact that there's actually a light source there and do it darker, do it how I think rather than how it looks. Always a dangerous thing to do. Is painting how you think rather than how it actually looks, but I am wondering whether that would produce a better image. I suppose what I can do is I can hedge my bets, and I can do the inner part of the face here. I kind of want it to work on that, but I can do the inner part of the face here in a mid-tone, which will mean this will be lighter, and see how it looks. And if I really don't like the look of it, I can darken that down. That I might do, I think. It might then put some context around that eye a little bit. Yeah. We'll do that, I think. And that way we'll see how it looks. Decisions, you see. Being an artist isn't always just to look at it and paint it. When I'm doing pyrography, I kind of feel a bit odd doing it, because to get colour, get a reasonable amount of colour, I really do have to work as slow as I'm doing here, and yet when I'm streaming it feels like I ought to be doing it faster, and I'm almost automatically trying to do it faster, and ultimately all that does is actually slow things down. But it just feels odd on a medium like Twitch broadcasting to be using a pen in almost slow motion. That's his muzzle, and yeah, I've got a dark. It's coming up around there, yeah. For some reason there's something also quite really rather difficult about talking while I'm doing something so slow. It almost feels like I ought to be really concentrating hard. And I'm not. My mind is just almost going blank while I'm doing this. I won't say what I think that looks like, but I don't like it as it is. I've got to do something about that at some point. Luckily it looks different in person to what it looks like on the stream. But I will have to see. I think I've made a mistake somewhere in there, and I'm going to have to see if I can rescue it. And here I am going quiet again. Actually, what we're at 9:30 here is probably more an indication of the fact that I'm getting tired, I suspect. Because that is something that I do when I get tired. I go even quieter. If that's possible, when I given that I don't talk a great deal. It gets quite amusing at work because I don't talk a great deal at work. So when people learn that I broadcast, they can't believe that I actually talk for much. And yet I do actually talk rather a lot more than most people think at work, which is kind of a weird thing. I'm not quite sure how they think I don't talk a great deal. It's always easier though to talk when you know exactly what it is you're talking about. Which is probably why I'm not talking a great deal now, because I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah. I've got to add some colour in there. Okay, let's give it a little bit. Let's give it a light coating of colour. I said a light coating tool. Just define the edge maybe. It's something that I often find with my own pyrography is, and it looks. I find it looks really weird until I've actually got colour applied to most of the image. Even if it's not the final colour, I just need something just to show basically where all the edges are, and then it starts to look a bit better to me. That's, yeah, facial anatomy. So facial anatomy there, that's looking weird. Because that's the edge of his face, basically just around, or the edge of the skull around there. This is way back on the back of his cheek almost. So the proportions look a little bit odd. Anyway, we shall carry on working with what it looks like, not what I think it should be. Now that's unusual for Petrol Rocks. I don't often hear somebody with vocals. Oh, hello there, little pussycat. Unfortunately, that's one I can't show on stream, because that's Felix. Felix has just come and curled up underneath my desk down there. And he's in the shadow, so I'm not even going to turn the camera on him because you won't see him. Because he's black and white in the shade, in the shadow. But he's... I'm not his favourite person, I don't think. He doesn't particularly like me stroking him. I think he's probably just more afraid I'm going to pick him up and take him to the vets or something, because it's always me that has to do that. And he has a tendency to, I won't say run away from me, but he will, if you walk towards him, he'll walk in the opposite direction. And who was that? Was that you? That can't have been you, Felix. Somebody just meowed. Oh, it's you. Come on then. Come on then. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on, Theo. Sorry, I just disappeared off camera because I've got this little fella. Shall we show you to the people? Let's go to that. There we go. This is the model. This is the model for the Pyrography. He's just come in squeaking at me. He will actually go and curl up or actually probably stretch out underneath this desk I'm working on. And as you can see, he's almost the same colour as the Pyrography. You're not going to purr? You are, yes, that's it. Yes, this microphone is actually quite sensitive. Hopefully I'm not causing it to crackle or anything. It's really hard to set the levels up with it because it is so sensitive, and yet it's actually got quite a quiet output. Mew. Yep. You, hello. Usually when he comes in mewing, he usually wants to be picked up and just given a little bit of attention. He wasn't actually so keen on me picking him up just now, but as you can see, he actually doesn't mind quite so much. Shall we put you down? Put you down and let you go back to sleep. No, tell you what. Let's see if we can give everybody a really cute picture of you, eh? We'll turn you like that. If I stand up on tiptoes, you can see him here. He will actually go to sleep like this if he's tired enough. You're going to turn and face the other way, face the camera. Eh? He's probably sleepy enough, because one of the things he will tend to do when he's like this is he'll actually reach up and start padding my nose with his paws. And he's just touching it, but I don't actually know what he's after trying to do, but it's probably the reflection in the glasses, I suspect. But there we go. Let's put him down. You going to put you down? Shall we put you down now? There you go. Oops. You leave him alone as well. You go curl up under there. I don't think Felix wants any attention, Theo, so that's it, you go lay down. Right. Back to the main camera. So hopefully he looks somewhat like this image. Now you've seen the real model. No, you're not staying now, Theo. You've come in, you've been on. Oh, you're going to curl there, right in the middle of the floor. Okay. Yes, so hopefully it looks somewhat like this. Let's add in a little bit of... No, I wasn't talking to you either. He does. Thank you very much for that. At least I have got a reasonable representation of him then. Yeah, I can see now I'm starting to put this colour in. It's starting to look a lot better, which is obviously good because that's the intent. They're quite why it's not in a caravan, I'm not sure. And I'm sure that probably went over people's heads. It's just me. I have a tendency to say, instead of saying to all intents and purposes, I'll say to all those in caravans and the odd dolphin. Yeah, I know it's weird. So if I just add a little bit of colour in, just it makes me laugh. But there again, I'm not saying anything about that. One of the things that's always good to practice with pyrography is being able to use all parts of the tool that you've got in your hand, because quite often they can, just by using the tool in a different at a different angle or in a different direction, you can get all sorts of effects and different shadings. For example, if I flip this one over and use the point, I've got a really sharp line that I can create. One of the things I'm not very good at though is using this right to left as I'm trying to do here. It's something I'll have to practice, but not on a piece that I've invested quite a bit of time in, so I'm going to turn it over and do it the other way. But if I try and do this right to left, I tend to overheat the piece, overheat it and overcook the colour. Something I actually realised tonight when I was at the start of this stream, when I first started talking about pyrography, is how a good sort of analogy is making toast. And I've had quite a few of discussions with people about how pyrography is actually, when they see me doing it, they think I'm sort of purposely going really slowly, and I'm not. I'm perhaps not going as fast as is absolutely possible to do, but I'm not going slowly. And at the start of this stream tonight, I actually just realised how much of an analogy making toast is, because when you put toast in a toaster, especially if you use a grill type toaster, and you put the toast in, it doesn't immediately go brown. It takes a few minutes. and I'm doing this. I'm cooking the wood the same way as you toast toast. I'm toasting the wood, and it's an amazing. It's just struck me as an amazing analogy as to how, why it takes a time to apply pyrography to wood, because I'm toasting the wood, and that strikes me as being something that probably people will understand. I don't know, those of you that are listening out there now, I don't know whether that gives you a better idea of what's going on. A slow toaster. Oh, I don't know, I'm just trying to think about even the pop-up toaster I've got probably takes about a minute and a half or something like that, 2 minutes to make a couple of slices of toast. You're trying to say I'm not working very fast, Coyote Dancer. You're probably right. I mean, talking obviously doesn't make it any quicker, especially when I stop working, but at the time, but that, just adding, for me, just adding that in has now started to change the face shape. I think I want a little bit of colour. I'm not quite sure what it is about this eye. To get the right shape, yeah. Yep, that's right, it does. And if you try and go over it, having scratched the wood, you get a different tone and different texture. It still stands out. I've got, I think the Avro Lancaster that I did on a piece of hardboard. At some point, it had a piece of tape stuck to it, and when I've taken the tape off, I hadn't noticed, and I've applied pyrography over the top, and you can see exactly where the piece of tape was, because obviously it's just disturbed the surface texture. And that was before I even applied any pyrography to it. So yes, once you start trying to erase, I'm trying to think what I need to do around that eye. I'd love to get that looking a bit better to me. I'd feel a lot more comfortable with the image. If I could do that. It's sort of too flat here, I think. This side's fine. The nose is sort of fine. It sort of feels a bit flat here. But of course, the way his head is tilted, it kind of is sort of flat. Maybe I need to rock the eye a little bit. I wonder if it's just as simple as that. Let's just try. tiny bit of colour just around there. Yeah, that might be it. It could well be that just the wood that's around it here is just too white. And that's drawing my eye and therefore throwing off the perspective. So let me just apply a little bit of very light tone of colour around here. No. I'm going to have to ponder that one, I think. And in fact, I think what I'll do is I'm going to leave it and think on that for this evening. What's it look like on? Yeah, it actually doesn't look quite as bad on the broadcast as it does here in person. I mean, it kind of looks like he's got no ear at the moment, although there is one very, very faintly there, and that might, I guess, change things a little bit if I put that in. Or darken that up a little bit. That might actually change some of the perspective view. I'm sort of this eye in person. The eye doesn't look to me right. There's something off about it, and it's almost as though the side of the face is too flat. But I'm not sure that's actually what it is. When I look on the broadcast, so I'm looking as though I'm standing back about a few feet, it actually looks a lot better. And I notice the fact that I can't see the ear more, so I'm more attracted to this area, which is perhaps why it's looking a little bit flat, and this area here as well. Is also perhaps contributing to the fact to bringing the eye forward. I'm not actually sure. The lighting is right just now. Okay. It's a subtle thing. You know, I'm almost looking at it and it's growing on me. I may be being a bit too harsh on myself in a way. Maybe I just carry on a little bit more with it and it'll settle into place. I do like this area though. I think that's really nice. I am sort of quite pleased with it, and I'm actually pleased with the eyes themselves. If I felt them, yeah, it sort of does. It's growing on me. It is definitely growing on me. What I may have to do is. Yes, I suppose it is. I kind of need somebody else maybe to look at it and sort of perhaps offer their opinions. Maybe what I will have to do next week, if I don't do any more in the meantime, is sort of sit this in front of me on the wall whilst I'm working, and I'll just keep looking at it, and I'll either get used to it, or after a couple of days I will realise what it is that's upsetting me about it. Yes, yeah, I agree. Stay away from it. One of the things I will often do with things like that is maybe just do something like that, and work on it that way up for a while, because it's a lot harder to concentrate on the spot that you that's one of my tricks, is literally just to do, sort of invert the image. Yeah, work on the ears. I think you're probably right, Coyote Dancer, definitely. I mean, tipping it up like that, it actually doesn't seem as bad to me. It doesn't seem I'm seeing a different thing when I look at it that way up. I'm seeing sort of a less focused eye, actually, is what I'm seeing that way up. But it's looking a lot. It's looking a lot better upside down. Oh, I can't really hang it upside down though. But yes, no, I think you're right. Probably work on the ears. So add a little bit more of the background in, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll do some of that tomorrow. I think some of these other crafts are perhaps more interesting than to people watching them than me building the 3D printer. So I'll maybe do some more pyrography tomorrow, or I'll try and see if I can either get a bench hook made, or screw the carving to a carving vise, and maybe might do some carving on the weekend. We shall see. Oh, that's Moobot and Pretzel Rocks talking to each other. Okay. Yes, so an upside down image. Well, as a last picture, I'll turn it that way up. Yeah, it looks different now. Yeah, you're right. Do the ears. Do the ears. Right, so let's go to that camera and say to everybody that is watching, thank you very much for doing so. I've enjoyed what I've been doing. Hope you've enjoyed seeing it there and chatting to you guys as well. I'm going to say, if you enjoyed it, please feel free to follow me here on Twitch, on Twitter as well, at Zaragonart, on both of them. You can even find some of the very early pyrography out on YouTube, youtube.com/Zaragonart. And I suppose if I'm going to mention those three, I might as well mention the fact that there's an Etsy shop where you can buy some of the jewellery, like this silver item and the things that you've been seeing here in the window. Most of those are available on Etsy, zaragonart.etsy.com. And the other thing is Facebook. You can find me on Facebook as well, where there tends to be more pictures and a few bits of descriptions. If you actually, and you can find me on Facebook at Zaragonart. Zaragonart everywhere. Indeed, even on the website, zaragonart.com, there is a little bit more explanation about some of the pieces and some of the techniques on there as well. Yes, that's the advertising bit. I ought to do it more often, I guess, but I tend to only do it at the end. I haven't yet got comfortable with advertising in the middle of the stream, but I ought to do it, I guess, and encourage people to join the stream and follow me and things like that. But anyway, I'm going to go get a hot cup of coffee and a bag of crisps. I think I deserve a bag of crisps, so I'm going to have a bag of crisps. Probably sit down and watch a glass blower. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope I shall be on tomorrow night. Don't see any reason why I shouldn't be at the moment, so keep an eye out for me for then. And bye for now.